I'm fine. I miss you a lot. So, how's your Christmas and New Year's Eve? It's like other Christmas and New Year vacation. Of course, it's happy. It's been more happier if you're... Well, speaking of my vacation, New Year was totally happy. We had a countdown and waited for you. And of course, I never forget to jump. I guess it's time. No, Pastor. You're right. We might get late. Let's go. Have you seen Mariella?
I think I've seen her in the Nivahat a while ago.
Okay. I think she is gone. Why are you alone? This is nothing. Come on, share it to me. Brent keeps on teasing me. God. Hey, you not even say sorry?
I didn't see you. I am big. You're small.
What? So you just said that? How boastful. You're right, but I'm okay now. I want to throw you to the garbage. You're kidding, right? Of course, I still have a heart.
Well,
Hey, Mariella, why are you alone? Where's your friend Jessie? She's outside, preparing for the Mikilang pageant. Oh, yes, the pageant is here. You wish her luck. Alright, bye. Let me show you this video. What's with that video? It's our endocrine system.
Shawty's like a melody in my head that I can't keep out. Got me singing like na 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 every day's like my iPod stuck on replay.
Hello and welcome to chapter 26. This is on hormones in the endocrine system. I've got the clock started. I've been running a little bit long the last few, and so I'm going to try to keep it short, but this is a big chapter, so we're going to have to get going fast. Got two guys over here. That guy, the little guy, is normal, and that guy, Mr. Robert Wadlow, is a pituitary giant. What does that mean? It means he has a hyperactive pituitary that was secreting too much growth hormone when he was growing up, and so he got enormously tall, something like almost 9 feet tall. What's this chapter about? It's about hormones, and hormones are chemicals that are secreted by glands. And so a typical gland is going to contain a number of cells, and those cells will release these chemicals, hormones, which will simply move into the circulatory system, and they're going to diffuse through the whole body. The nice thing about a hormone is that it's designed so it's only going to be picked up by one specific cell. And so instead of being like a nerve where we have to send it to a specific or connect it to a specific cell, it actually can send that message out to the whole of the body. Now what we find is that there's a real similarity between the endocrine system and the nervous system. In other words, we have cells that are hormones or hormone secreting cells, and then we have those that are neurosecretory, and so this is an example of a cell that is actually sending a message down, and that message is saying let's release some of these hormones. And then finally, if we go through the continuum, we have a nerve cell, and a nerve cell, you probably know, will actually secrete neurotransmitters at the end, and so the message is actually jumping across a gap. And so there's a lot of similarities between each of these. Now, the way that hormones are sent are essentially in two types. We have what are called water-soluble hormones. Water-soluble hormones are those that are going to float through the body, and it's going to be picked up by a protein receptor that's on the outside of the cell. Now, that sets up something called the signal transduction pathway. So this could be, for example, epinephrine, and that's going to set up a series of events which maybe releases glucose from glycogen inside a cell. The other type, or the other group, is what are called steroid hormones. Steroid hormones are a lipid, and so they're actually based in, an example could be estrogen, for example. It's based on the cholesterol molecule, and so it will actually move right through that lipid bilayer, and it'll move into the inside of the cell where it actually can work on the DNA to make, for example, a different protein. So those are kind of the two different ways that it works. As far as endocrine system goes, there's a number of glands that you have to be familiar with. In other words, you have to know what the gland is, where the gland is, what's the hormone that it's secreting, and then what kind of action is that hormone going to have when it finally reaches that target cell. Now, these are three kind of auxiliary glands that you should be familiar with. If we start with the first one, this is a pineal gland. This is actually a picture of it. Pineal gland is going to be situated way up here in the brain, and we think that it has control over our daily rhythms. Pineal gland is going to secrete something called melatonin, and it does that only when it's dark. And so in the middle of the night, our melatonin levels are going to be at the highest amount that they are during the day. And so it maybe helps us in our biorhythms. It's almost sometimes been described as like a third eye. Next one is the thymus gland. The thymus gland is going to sit right here, which is going to be on top of the heart. You can see right here in the picture of a fetus, the thymus gland is actually really, really big, and then as we get smaller, it kind of has a diminished size at least. Thymus gland, remember, is important in making T lymphocytes, which is important in immunity, but it doesn't have as big an importance as we get older as it does when we're younger in establishing that immunity. Last one is going to be the thyroid gland. Thyroid gland is going to be situated right here in the neck. Function of the thyroid gland, it controls our metabolism. And so if we have a hyperactive thyroid, we're increasing the amount of T3 and T4. That has to do with the number of iodine molecules that are found in the chemical. And what that does, if we increase the amount of T3 and T4, our metabolism will speed up. So we'll run more quickly. And if we decrease it, then it's going to slow down our metabolism. But that thyroid in return is getting controlled by the pituitary gland. And so now we get to the real meat, you can see, of it. This is the hypothalamus. It's actually part of the brain. And then next to that, we have the pituitary gland. And so the pituitary gland has the posterior, which actually is part of the brain. It secretes two chemicals, oxytocin and ADH. ADH, remember, is important in regulating the amount of water that we have inside our body. And it's really affecting the collecting tubules in the kidney. And then you can see here that the anterior pituitary secretes a number of different hormones, and each of those are going to have a different effect. All the way from the thyroid TSH, which controls the thyroid and thereby controls metabolism, all the way up to endorphins, which are kind of our natural opiates, and they are painkillers inside of our body. Homeostasis is a big part of this. Homeostasis, and I would say, if you had to remember, there are 3 and maybe 4 ways that our body maintains homeostasis that you simply have to know for the AP Bio test. First one is going to be thermoregulation, how we keep our body temperature the same. Remember, if it goes too high, we're going to start to sweat. We're going to start to dilate those blood vessels. But the next 2 are very important, and they're touched on in this chapter. First one is calcium level in the blood. Calcium is incredibly important for our nerves to function. That's one reason why our nerves don't function correctly unless we have the right balance of calcium. And so where's that calcium actually jumping between? It's jumping between the blood, and then we can store it or deposit it inside our bones, the calcium. And so how do we control that? Well, it's a feedback loop. If the amount of calcium in our blood gets too high, then the thyroid gland is going to secrete a hormone called calcitonin. That tells our bones to store more of that calcium, and also it tells our kidneys that we don't need to hold on to as much, and so we can actually leave that. Let's say the calcium drops too low, then we've got the parathyroid gland, which is going to secrete PTH or parathyroid hormone, and that's going to increase the amount. So we can grab calcium, for example, from our intestines. And so it's a nice little control mechanism. The other one that a lot of you are more familiar with is the blood glucose control. Blood glucose control is going to be controlled by the islets of Langerhans, which are a group of cells found on the pancreas. There are the beta cells and then the alpha cells, which are going to be in the pancreas. Beta cells will secrete insulin, so you're familiar with that, when the blood glucose level gets too high. That means we have too much glucose in our blood. That tells our body to take up that glucose and also to store it as glycogen in the liver. Now, if the blood glucose level drops too far, then we're going to get the alpha cells of the pancreas are going to secrete another hormone that's called glucagon, and that's going to take that blood glucose and it's going to break it down, it's going to break down the glycogen and release that glucose into our body. Now, if we have problems with that, we have what's a disease called diabetes. And diabetes is diagnosed by having too much glucose in our urine, actually. So it's too much glucose that we're not able to use. There are two types of that. The one we used to call like child onset diabetes. In that, we have an autoimmune disorder where it's actually attacking the cells in the pancreas, and so we can't make insulin correctly. And so if you have that, you have to get insulin shots your whole life. But the big problem we're having now is with type 2 diabetes. We used to call that adult onset, but we're now finding that kids are having problems with it as well. It's less to do with the insulin and more to do with the cells. In other words, the cells aren't sure what to do with all of that blood glucose. And the reason why, most of it all has to do with lack of exercise and being overweight. And also this really, really sugar diet that we eat. Our cells are kind of losing the ability to take that back in. Adrenal glands are also important, and they control quick response. There are two types to the adrenal glands, and adrenal glands sit right on top of the kidney. There's the medulla, or the center, and that's actually going to receive a nervous signal, and that's going to be really, really fast, and that is our fight or flight response. In other words, if somebody pulls a knife on me, I have to quickly respond, and so I'm going to secrete adrenaline, we call that, which are epinephrine and norepinephrine. And then we have a little long term, which is going to be the adrenal cortex. We receive a message, and that's going to start secreting mineralocorticoids and glucocorticoids. And an example of this would be there's my timer. That's long-term stress. What we now know about stress is that it's good, but over a long period of time, it actually can be pretty debilitating. Last thing I want to leave you with as far as a study tip is after you've gone through all the different hormones and all the different glands, in the end of this chapter, there's a nice little diagram that looks like this. And if you can go through that without using your book and step through what's the hormone, what's the gland, and what does it do without any mistakes, I think you're well on your way to understanding endocrines and the hormone system.
Oh my, who's that girl? She's very small.
Who are those pigs? They're very big.
We're not big.
Come here.
Come here.
You don't know why other people big, tall, small. I don't want this to happen again. Alright. Do you know him? No. Oh, just game ah. Meron pa game?
Oh, you atin.
No. Hey, you like even say sorry?
I even see you. You're small. I will.
Let me show you. Do you know him? No. I don't know him. Oh, just